The floor of the training arena shook under my boots the moment his fist came at my face without warning. I did not see it coming. Nobody did. 1 second I was standing across from Draven Voss, waiting for the referee drone to call the start of the match, and the next second, his arm was already moving, faster than the rules allowed, faster than any sanctioned strike should move. My name is Callan Ashworth. I am a cadet at the Interstellar Defense Academy, and I come from a planet the rest of the galaxy calls a death world. They mean it as an insult most of the time. They mean it as a warning the rest of the time. Earth is not gentle. It never was. And on that day, in front of 300 cadets from a dozen different star systems, that fact was about to matter more than anyone in that arena expected. Draven Voss was a Threxian, one of the tallest and strongest species in the academy, with reinforced bone plating along his jaw and cheeks that could stop a low-powered energy blast without a scratch. He was ranked first in close combat. He never let anyone forget it, and for 6 months, he had made it his personal mission to remind me, every single day, that humans were the weakest species ever accepted into this academy. He called us slow, he called us fragile, he called us lucky, as if the only reason humanity had survived long enough to reach the stars was some cosmic accident, rather than 4 billion years of relentless pressure that shaped every cell in our bodies to fight for the next breath. I never argued with him. I never needed to. I had learned, in my very first week here, that humans are taught to hold back. Our instructors explained it quietly, almost like a secret passed between people who understood something the rest of the galaxy did not. Earth pushes hard on everything that lives there. Gravity is heavier than most species are used to. Predators are faster and smarter than anything most cadets had ever trained against. Disease tests the body every single day, and on top of all of that, humans have spent our entire history testing each other, pushing each other, competing against each other in ways that shaped our reflexes into something almost unnatural. So when a human cadet trains with someone from a gentler world, we are told to throttle ourselves down, not because we are dangerous on purpose, but because our full effort during a routine sparring match once put an allied cadet in a medical bay for 2 weeks, and the diplomatic fallout from that incident nearly ended the whole exchange program. After that, every human recruit signs an agreement. Hold back. Always hold back. Never show your true output unless your life actually depends on it. I had followed that rule for 6 months. I smiled through the insults. I trained at half strength, sometimes less, letting opponents believe they were simply better than me. I told myself it did not matter what anyone thought, as long as I graduated and earned my place among the Defense Fleet crews humanity had been promised a seat on. But Draven Voss was not interested in a normal match that day. He had requested me specifically for the exam, in front of the entire training class, in front of the ranking boards that would be broadcast across every allied world watching our progress. He wanted an easy win recorded for history. He wanted proof, permanent and public, that his species stood above mine. The referee drone gave the signal. I raised my guard the way I always did, ready to perform the same careful, restrained routine I had practiced for months. Slow footwork, soft blocks, a performance of weakness that kept the peace. Draven did not wait for the routine. His fist crossed the distance between us before my mind had even finished processing that the match had started. There was no opening strike, no testing jab, no warning at all. It was a full, unrestrained blow aimed directly at my head, thrown with intent to end the match immediately and leave no question about the outcome. I do not remember deciding to move. There was no thought in that moment, no calculation, no plan. There was only 4 billion years of instinct rising up through my arm before my brain had finished registering the threat. My body reacted the way every human body has been trained to react since the first ancestor of ours had to survive a predator lunging out of the dark. I turned my shoulder, dropped my weight into my back leg, and threw a single counterstrike toward the only target instinct offered me. The sound it made when it landed silenced the entire arena. Draven's reinforced facial plating, rated to withstand direct hits from training weapons, cracked across the surface like glass under a hammer. His head snapped back. His legs folded beneath him before his brain had time to send them any signal at all. He was unconscious before his body hit the floor. For a moment, nobody moved. 300 cadets sat frozen in their seats, staring down at the arena floor, staring at me, staring at the crumpled shape of a cadet who had never lost a match in his entire academy career. Then the alarms began. Medical drones burst through the emergency doors within seconds, followed by a full surgical team sprinting across the arena floor. I stood exactly where I was, my hand still raised from the strike, watching as they lifted Draven onto a stretcher and rushed him toward the medical wing. Someone shouted for the arena to be sealed. Someone else shouted for me to stay exactly where I stood. I did not resist. I did not run. I simply stood there, breathing hard, staring at my own hand as if it belonged to a stranger. The surgical team worked on Draven for nearly 6 hours. I learned later that his facial plating had fractured in 3 separate places, and the impact had cracked part of the reinforced bone beneath it as well. Surgeons had to rebuild sections of his jaw and cheek using synthetic grafts, then reinforce the new plating so it would hold under future stress. It was, according to the medical staff, one of the most extensive facial reconstructions performed at the academy in years. While all of that happened, I sat alone in a holding room, waiting to learn what would happen to me. I expected the worst. I expected expulsion. I expected some kind of formal reprimand that would end my career before it had truly begun. Every scenario running through my mind ended with me being sent home in disgrace. Another example the galaxy could point to when explaining why humans were too unpredictable, too dangerous, too much of a risk to keep among the stars. Instead, 3 senior academy overseers walked into that room, and none of them looked angry. They looked concerned. They looked confused. They looked, more than anything else, like they were trying to understand something that did not fit the shape of anything they already knew. The lead overseer, a tall Velkarn official named Sona Rel, placed a data pad on the table between us and turned it so I could see the readout. It showed the exact force output recorded by the arena's sensors at the moment of impact. She asked me a simple question. She asked how an unaugmented human cadet, with no cybernetic enhancements and no combat modifications of any kind, had produced a number that high. I looked at the readout for a long moment before I answered. Then I told her the truth. The same truth every human cadet is taught to keep quiet about unless someone asks directly. I explained that humans are not hiding some secret weapon. We are not tricking anyone or cheating the system. What we are doing, every single day, in every training session, is holding back. I told her about Earth. I told her about a world where the air itself pulls harder on every living thing than most species ever experience, where predators evolved alongside us for millions of years, sharpening our senses and our reflexes, just to keep us alive long enough to raise the next generation. I told her about the diseases that tested every human immune system relentlessly, about the environments that punished any weakness immediately and without mercy, about the long history of humans testing each other in every possible way, physically and mentally, for as long as recorded history existed. None of that, I explained, was something we chose. It was simply what shaped us, the same way calm gravity and gentle environments shaped other species into something different. Our baseline physical output, even without any enhancement at all, rivaled species that relied on cybernetic augmentation to reach similar numbers. We had learned this the hard way, through past incidents that hurt people we never meant to hurt. So now, every human recruit signs an agreement to throttle down in training, to hold back unless a real threat forces our instincts to take over completely. That was exactly what had happened with Draven. The moment his unsanctioned strike came at me with real intent behind it, my restraint disappeared and pure reflex took its place. The counter-strike I threw was not some hidden technique or maximum effort attack. It was simply the fastest, most efficient reaction my body could produce under a genuine threat, and it had barely required any real strain from me at all. Sona Rel studied me for a long moment after I finished speaking. Then she asked one final question. She asked what would have happened if I had not held back at all, if I had responded with everything my body was capable of, instead of the smallest reaction necessary to protect myself. I did not have a good answer for that. I told her honestly that I did not know, because I had never once, in 6 months of training, allowed myself to find out. The overseers left the room without announcing any punishment. Instead, they told me the incident would be reviewed as a training safety matter rather than a disciplinary one, since the recorded footage clearly showed Draven had thrown the first unsanctioned strike. I would not be expelled. I would not be reprimanded. I would simply be asked to continue training as normal, though I suspected nothing about how the academy viewed me would ever be normal again. Word of what happened spread through the academy faster than any official statement could contain it. By the next morning, every cadet in every class had heard some version of the story, and most versions had grown far beyond what actually happened. Some claimed I had shattered Draven's entire skull. Others claimed I had done it without even trying, using only 2 fingers. None of the rumors were accurate, but all of them carried the same underlying message. The quiet human cadet everyone had underestimated for 6 months was not what anyone had believed him to be. For the first time since I arrived at the academy, cadets from other species began to watch me differently in the hallways. Not with pity anymore. Not with the casual disdain I had grown used to absorbing without complaint. Something closer to caution had replaced it, an uncertainty that followed me from the mess hall to the training grounds, as if everyone around me was quietly recalculating something they thought they already understood. I did not enjoy the attention. I had never wanted it. All I had wanted, from the very first day I stepped onto this station, was to prove that humanity belonged among the stars, just as much as any other species, that had earned its place through struggle and sacrifice. I had never wanted to prove it through a single unplanned moment of instinct in front of an entire training class. Draven remained in the medical wing for 11 days, while the surgical grafts on his face finished integrating with his natural bone structure. I visited him twice during that time, though neither visit was easy. The first time, he refused to speak to me at all, staring silently at the ceiling of his recovery room while I stood near the door, unsure whether my presence was helping or making things worse. The second time, something had changed. He was sitting up when I arrived, the new plating along his jaw still slightly discolored from the recent grafting, and he looked at me for a long moment before speaking. He told me that in his entire life, across every match he had ever fought, he had never once felt real fear from an opponent. Confidence, yes. Respect for skill, certainly, but never fear. He said that for one brief moment, right before everything went dark, he had felt something he did not have a word for in his own language. Something ancient and immediate. A warning buried deep inside him that told him, too late, that he had made a serious mistake. He asked me, quietly, if I would agree to a proper rematch once he had fully recovered. Not out of anger, and not to reclaim his ranking, but because he needed to understand what had actually happened in that arena, and he believed the only way to truly understand it was to face it again, this time with both of us at full effort and full honesty. I agreed, though I told him honestly that I still did not know what my full effort actually looked like, since I had never once allowed myself to reach it. That admission seemed to unsettle him more than anything else I had said. In the weeks that followed, the Academy quietly began revising portions of its combat training protocols, adding new safety measures specifically designed around human participation in sparring exercises. Instructors who had once treated our restraint requirements as a minor formality began enforcing them with far more seriousness. Some species, I noticed, started approaching human cadets with genuine curiosity for the first time, asking real questions instead of repeating old assumptions. Not everyone changed their opinion of us, of course. Some cadets grew more distant, uncomfortable with a reality that did not match the comfortable story they had been telling themselves about humanity's place among the stars. But something fundamental had shifted, quietly and permanently, in how the Academy as a whole understood the species they had once dismissed as fragile. As for me, I kept training every single day, the same as before, though something in the way I moved through the Academy had changed as well. I no longer felt the need to shrink myself smaller than I already was. I still held back, because the agreement I had signed still mattered, because the diplomatic peace between species still mattered, because causing unnecessary harm was never something I wanted, regardless of what anyone believed about my species. But I no longer apologized, even silently, for what I was. Late one evening, several weeks after the incident, I stood alone in the observation deck overlooking the training station, watching distant stars drift past the viewport in complete silence. A younger human cadet, newly arrived on her first week at the Academy, approached, and asked if the stories about what happened in the arena were actually true. I told her they were, though probably exaggerated in most of the details people repeated. She asked if I had been afraid, standing there after the strike landed, waiting to learn my fate. I thought about that question for a long moment before answering honestly. I told her I had not been afraid of what I did in that arena. What frightened me, if anything, was realizing just how much I had never allowed myself to test, how much of myself I had been carefully hiding away out of fear that showing it might make others afraid of me instead. She considered that answer quietly, before asking one final question, the same question everyone eventually seemed to ask once they learned the full story. She wanted to know if the strike that ended Draven's undefeated record had truly been my hardest possible effort. I looked out at the stars for a moment before answering, thinking of home, thinking of every ordinary day spent living beneath a sky far heavier and far harsher than anything most species in this academy would ever understand. I told her, quite honestly, that back on Earth, nobody would have even called it a hard punch at all.